We begin today with a session titled Championing Women's Health, Strategies for Better Breast Cancer in Europe, sponsored by Daiichi Sankyo. Despite being the most common cancer among women globally, breast cancer remains riddled with inequities. Women often face significant barriers, insufficient access to information, financial hardship due to treatment, and the invisible burden of caregiving, even when undergoing cancer care themselves. This session builds on recent research from my team at Economist Impact, which presents a women-centric roadmap for cancer care in Europe. I'll share a presentation of key findings, followed by a panel discussion that looks at policy reforms, care models, and community engagement strategies that puts women, both as patients and as caregivers, at the center of the conversation. Following that, we turn to a disease that receives far less public attention, but has equally serious implications: prostate cancer. 1 in 11 men in Europe will be diagnosed with it in their lifetime. In our second panel, we'll explore how advances in digital health and interdisciplinary collaboration are transforming the way that prostate cancer is detected, managed, and treated, offering more personalized and timely care while improving outcomes. Together, these sessions reflect our broader mission here with this event, to tackle cancer not just with science and technology, but with a deep understanding of the lived experience, system inequities, and opportunities for policy innovation. So with that, let's get started. So we'll kick this session off with a brief presentation of findings from our latest research, Advancing Breast Cancer Care in Europe, a roadmap to a women-centric approach. Breast cancer is the most common cancer in Europe, as we said, and it accounts for the highest economic burden of all cancers, nearly 15 billion euros annually. But even as survival rates improve, with over 5.5 million women across Europe now living after diagnosis, many still face fragmented, inequitable care that doesn't reflect their full lived experience. For example, beyond costs at the population level, we also know that this often translates to financial challenges at the individual level. Many women experience financial toxicity, the financial burden associated distress due to care, travel costs, lost time at work, and other impacts, an area that's under-researched and poorly understood. This research is based on insights from over 75 experts across the EU and 5 countries and combines qualitative data, best practices, and policy analysis. What emerges from the research is a clear call. We need to move from a system focused only on survival to one that helps women thrive by prioritizing quality of life, integrating tailored support, and tackling long overlooked gaps in prevention, access, survivorship, and data. What's at stake here is not just health, but dignity, equity, and empowerment. And the data shows we have both the knowledge and the tools to transform breast cancer care if we act decisively together. So before I detail the results of our study, I'll share a little more background on the study, as well as our research approach. Overall, our work is aiming to do 3 things: improve awareness of women-centered breast cancer care, understand the challenges that women face, and identify opportunities for improving care through effective policy and women-centered approaches. The first step of our research was defining women-centric care. While there are varying definitions, the one that we've used is related to the unique preferences, needs, challenges, and experiences of women facing breast cancer. We conducted our research across 5 key steps. We conducted a literature review establishing the current state of policy and care. We held a steering committee meeting defining the research direction and validating our definition, our roadmap, and our recommendations. We did one-to-one interviews to gain deeper insights, and country workshops, which included focused discussion at the country level. And finally, content development, which includes the report and 6 infographics, one for the EU and one for our 5 focus countries: France, Italy, Germany, Spain, and the UK. So what did we find? I'll highlight our key findings specific to screening and treatment. One of the first areas we explored was screening. Many countries across the EU are struggling. According to the latest available data, only 8 European countries currently meet the minimum 70 to 75% recommendation set by EU guidelines. Rates range from 10% to over 80% in the region. In this figure, the green dot represents screening rates in 2012, while the dark blue dot is 2021. Notably, many countries across Europe have lost progress due to structural, logistical, and clinical barriers and challenges due to COVID. We also find wide disparities across the region in treatment access. In our focus countries, between 50 and 96% of EU-approved drugs are available, but full reimbursement of the available drugs ranges from 44% up to 100%. But even EMA-approved treatments are often inaccessible due to slow or incomplete funding processes, and country income level doesn't necessarily correlate to quicker access. We see this in the countries that we focused on. Average time to access oncology drugs ranges from 93 days in Germany to 725 days in Spain. This is also partly due to geographic inequity, so regional and rural disparities disrupt timely care and continuity, as well as workforce shortages. Gaps in clinical staffing prevent personalized, coordinated, and women-centric treatment delivery. So what do we do about this? There's 3 key areas that we focused on as part of our research. And the first is prevention. We heard that in the panel earlier today. There's a disconnect across Europe about what we know about prevention and how to do it well, and what is actually being done in practice. One expert from our study noted, "I've never seen a campaign that says alcohol is a risk factor for breast cancer. Physical activity reduces the risk of many tumors, including breast cancer, but again, I've never seen a massive campaign." Second is a focus on an inclusive screening approach. In France, the Mammobus, a mobile breast screening unit, has been rolled out to drive screening rates in working-class Paris suburbs, aiming to boost screening coverage among women with low awareness. The third piece is specialist centers. Many of the experts involved in our study agree that establishing an extensive network of certified breast cancer centers is essential for providing quality care. Further, they highlight the importance of adhering to quality indicators at these centers, which can be monitored, audited, and replicated to improve outcomes. Unfortunately, the key finding from this report is that true women-centric breast cancer care is not realized in Europe. In addition to the recommendations on the previous slide, there are additional areas for attention that it would improve breast cancer care for women. Survivorship concerns are often overlooked, both in the early and advanced stages of breast cancer. From diagnosis onward, women face a range of physical, emotional, financial, and work-related challenges, and these are often intensified for those with metastatic disease. Support in these areas is crucial, but frequently hard to access. Many breast cancer survivors across Europe also still face financial discrimination. The right to be forgotten policy designed to protect survivors from such bias and enable them to resume normal lives once declared cured has been slow to gain widespread adoption. Linking policy more closely to practice and focusing on prevention through improved public health messaging and better resource allocation are also critical. Finally, as part of this work, Economist Impact proposed a roadmap, validated by our steering committee, to advance the implementation of a women-centric approach to breast cancer care in Europe. You can see a simplified version here. This roadmap highlights opportunities to incorporate a women-centric focus at every stage of the breast cancer journey, from prevention to early detection, diagnosis, treatment, follow-up, and survivorship, and importantly, end-of-life care. In this report, you'll find a more detailed version which offers actionable opportunities across the pathway. You can access the full report as well as the 6 infographics for the EU and our 5 countries of focus at the QR code on the screen. And there are printed copies of the report outside in the hallway as well. So thank you very much for your time and attention. Thank you. To discuss these topics in more detail, I'd now like to welcome our panel to the stage, which is notably an all-female panel. Maria Elena Nevado, member of European Parliament. Fatima Cardozo, who's joining us virtually, President, Advanced Breast Cancer Global Alliance. Dominika Kormanova, Chairwoman, OZI Amazonki, and Board Member, Europa Dana Slovakia. Anna Zubidio Maset, Vice President and Head of Oncology for Spain, Daichi Sankyo, and Virginia Adams, Scientific Director at Breast International Group, BIG. Please come to the stage. So I've just gotten word that Maria Elena is delayed, but she'll be joining us very shortly. And Fatima, are you with us online yet? Hello, can you hear us?
Yes, can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you. I'm glad to hear it because my first question is really for the whole panel, but I'd like to start with you since you're joining us virtually, and then we'll bring it to the room. So this research I just presented from Economist Impact paints a clear picture of inequities in breast cancer care across Europe. How can understanding a woman's journey from first symptoms through diagnosis, treatment, survivorship, or palliative care improve the way we shape health systems for cancer?
Thank you. Thank you very much. And thank you for the invitation to be here. I would like to emphasize that inequalities are not just between countries. Currently, they exist within each country. And even in high-income countries, the access to high-quality care is very variable. And it depends on many factors that are not necessarily just the approval of treatments, for example. And the reason why understanding, let's call it the breast cancer pathway, from since the moment there are symptoms or since the moment that the woman goes to a screening program, and what are the different challenges that that woman faces in the different countries and regions where she lives, is fundamental so that we can tackle the bottlenecks. I've been within the ABC Global Alliance. We've been doing this work with low-income countries, and we find obstacles and struggles that we didn't even think about it because we are used to think about the struggles that women face, for example, in big cities or developed countries, and we don't even imagine the struggles from someone who lives in a rural area from a low middle income country. And the disparities are enormous and very shocking, in fact.
Thank you. Yes, absolutely. And I think, elevating some of these challenges requires giving women a platform to share their experiences, and advocacy comes into play there. So, Dominika, I'd like to come to you now. Grassroots advocacy often plays a critical role in shaping cancer care. What are the most effective ways to integrate patient advocates, not only in care decisions, but in research and policy? And what's holding us back from doing this meaningfully in Europe?
Thank you very much. So I would like to firstly start that I'm feeling very nervous, very stressed, because I'm sitting here with very important women I'm really admiring. And Fatima, I would like to say hello to you also. I'm really sorry you are not here with us in person. I would like to maybe tell you more about my story. I was diagnosed when I was 32 with triple negative and also with BRCA1. I'm being leader of Slovak breast cancer NGO for a few years now already. And what you ask for the journey or path of breast cancer patient in Slovakia, because I would like to really speak much more about my country, because this is the story I know from the first step into the world of cancer, like prevention, until the last step as palliative care. Concerning our country, but also concerning all women that are being diagnosed with breast cancer, I think they deserve respectful way of being treated. In our country, there is like many areas where we should really make improvements, like when we are talking about prevention and screening programs, only 25% of women are going to mammograms. When we are speaking about diagnose and treatment in Slovakia, there is really lack of modern medicine when I can compare it, for example, to Czech Republic, because I'm comparing Slovakia very often to Czech Republic as we used to be together. In Slovakia, we have like 8 modern medicines, comparing to Czech Republic, where it's like 13. So the situation in Slovakia is very, very difficult. And when I heard today a lot of nice wording, like we are, like, Economist is champion of progress and we need to change mindset. I really hope that today I will be able to tell you a little bit more about our small country that really need to change mindset and really need to improve a lot.
Thank you for sharing, and we'll definitely come back to some of those experiences. I'd like to welcome Maria Elena to the stage. Thank you for joining us.
Hello.
Hi.
Sorry for the late.
No problem at all.
My
Welcome.
flight there was delayed.
No
and,
problem.
and then, well, I prefer speaking Spanish. Sorry for it, but
Please.
my assistant translates for me.
Wonderful. No, thanks for joining us today. I'll come to you in a moment, but I'll let you get settled. So Anna, I wonder, we've talked a little bit about the sort of advocacy pieces. Fatima raised some really important issues. But I'd be really curious from an industry standpoint, how can pharmaceutical companies play a larger role in designing and supporting care models that go beyond medication to address some of these needs that are pervasive across Europe for women?
Also very honored to be here with all of you and to bring the pharmaceutical company view on that. No, our key focus, our key responsibility is to push the boundaries of science, to keep working on innovation and on bringing innovative treatment. This is one of our key responsibilities, no, in terms of cancer, to keep learning about the biology of cancer, different targets, and developing new innovative treatment. But as you mentioned, we also can bring an active role in going beyond those treatments. In Daiichi Sankyo, for example, we reinvest 24% of our revenues on R&D, and this commitment that we started 40 years ago on cancer treatments bring us new technology on ADCs, on antibody drug conjugates that are bringing hope and life to many patients in some years. So we are very proud of these advancements, and I think it's one of the examples of this holistic women view that we can bring as well, because those antibody drug conjugates and new technologies are part of the precision medicines, those tailor treatments that really are for specific kind of patients and kind of cancer. So every patient is different, and this is a way of improving the life of patients, the quality of life, and reducing adverse events. And this is how cancer treatments are advancing. No, so I think this is key for pharmaceutical companies. But beyond that, of course, we I think we can bring dialogue across the different stakeholders. We are working to improve patient lives with physicians, payers, regulatory agencies, and really listen. I think this is the second thing we also have to do, to really listen to what are the needs of the patients in order the different initiatives we can put in order or where we can collaborate are really fitting the needs of the patient and have a real impact. This is why we collaborate in this report. I think it's great to gather 75 insights across the different countries and stakeholders. But what is more important is that we implement real actions that have a real impact in the life of our patients.
Absolutely. And I think one of the areas for opportunity in terms of making that impact is with clinical trials. So Virginia, I'd like to come to you now, as BIG's been instrumental in fostering international clinical trials. As new treatments accelerate, many women are still left behind, especially those in trials not designed with their realities in mind. So can you talk a little bit how industry, academia, policymakers can ensure that clinical trial research is inclusive, patient-guided, and accessible across Europe?
Sure. First of all, it's an honor to be up here with my fellow panelists. Thank you very much. So Breast International Group is a group of academic groups where we collaborate together to accelerate breast cancer research around the globe. So we're involved in international clinical trials. We've actually had a partnership with Europe Donna since the very beginning, almost 25 years ago. And since 2019, we've actually founded the BIG Patient Partnership. So it's a group of patient advocates, often experts. So they are not your ordinary, just everyday patient, but they're women who dedicate their time, they volunteer to help us. And they meet with the oncologists in our network who are designing new clinical trials. And we ask them what their opinions are on the trial designs, the trial endpoints. And we try to involve them from the very beginning, like I was saying, when we design the clinical trials through clinical trial conduct. Of course, that also helps to brainstorm how we can make sure to enroll patients from diverse backgrounds and also make sure that we recruit in the timelines that we set ourselves, through to reporting the trial results. So trying to translate the results from a technical language to more lay language, because we think it's very important to also for the participants of the trials to understand what the impact of the research has been. So we're very proud of this patient partnership. We think it's critical to involve patients because we, of course, have a limited amount of resources. Right now, I think everybody can understand we're all struggling to fund the research that we'd like to do. And so I think in order to decide where the priorities lie, the patients should really be at the heart of it. And so that's what we're trying to implement. And we're very happy. In a couple of weeks, we're going to welcome 2 new board members to BIG who are patient advocates from our patient partnership group. And we hope that this will allow them to feel like they're really sitting at the same table as oncologists and other experts who are part of the board of BIG. So we're really happy about that.
That's really interesting and really incredible work you're doing. It sort of goes back to what Anna was saying about the importance of listening. And I think we'll come back to this about sort of providing platforms and avenues to do that and how that is changing. But Maria Elena, I'd like to come to you. Welcome. As a policymaker at the European level, policy sort of sits across and above all of the things that we're talking about. So what are the most promising policy levers that the EU can use to promote equitable women-centric breast cancer care across the member states?
Bueno, como había dicho al principio, voy a hablar en español. Sorry for it. But, en primer lugar, quiero dar las gracias. Thank you so much for inviting me at this important event. It's an honor for me to be here. Como política, yo creo que es fundamental el gran paso que dio la Unión Europea con el Plan Europeo del Cáncer en el año 2021. Si quieres traducir.
First, she apologizes. She's going to be speaking in Spanish. She wants to thank everyone for inviting her. It's an honor to be here. As a politician, one of the most important steps that the European Union has made is the creation of the European Cancer Plan.
Creo que ha salvado muchas vidas y los datos están ahí. Creo que los conocen perfectamente, pero hay mucho camino por recorrer. Sobre todo, y creo que aquí se ha dicho, por lo que he podido escuchar cuando he llegado, mucho que trabajar en la equidad como prioridad. Poníais el ejemplo de Eslovaquia u otros países del este de Europa, donde la implementación del plan no ha sido exactamente la misma que, por ejemplo, en los países nórdicos o, por ejemplo, en mi país, en España. Y me parece fundamental que la implementación de las medidas que acuerde la Unión Europea y el respaldo parlamentario tengan una efectividad similar en todos los países miembros de la Unión Europea.
The European Cancer Plan saves lives. There's enough data to prove that, but we still have a long way to go. One of the things that I've seen the most is that we still have to work a lot towards equity and inclusivity. It has to become one of our priorities. I've seen that the cancer plan has not been implemented the same way in all European member states. One example has been Slovakia, that has been talked here before. And the European Cancer Plan has not been implemented the same way in this country than in the Nordic countries or in my own country, in Spain. I believe it is very important to make sure that the European Union, with the support of the European Parliament, make sure that the European Cancer Plan is equally implemented all across Europe.
Por primera vez tenemos una comisión de salud propia. En anteriores legislaturas éramos una subcomisión dentro de la comisión de ENVI. Y creo que esto es un paso sustancial para crear la Europa de la salud, que es lo que todos queremos. Pero hay mucho que trabajar. Yo estoy especialmente involucrada con el aspecto de la salud y la mujer, porque creo que hay que diferenciar claramente entre la salud y el género. Me parece fundamental y en particular, sobre todo también en el cáncer, donde creo que falta esa parte concreta para poder impulsar mejores medidas, por ejemplo, en el cáncer de mama o en el cáncer de mama metastásico.
It is, for the first time, SAND, the Health Commission, has become its own commission. It is not a subcommission of the DNB Commission. I believe this is a very important step towards creating the Europe of health, but we still have a long way to go. I am very involved in everything revolving health as well as women's health. I believe that we have to prioritize health and the equality regarding gender. I believe this is very obvious when it comes to cancer. Cancer is a very important part, and as well as breast cancer.
Y por último, para responder a esta pregunta, es muy importante la financiación. Estamos justo ahora en el Parlamento hablando del próximo marco financiero plurianual. Si la salud no está bien financiada, no podremos conseguir los objetivos que nos estamos imponiendo, por ejemplo, con los cribados, de llegar al 90% de las mujeres en este 2025 y un largo etcétera. Pero sí quiero apuntar aquí que hay que estar muy atentos, porque la Comisión está planteando un cambio radical en la estructura del presupuesto y también un cambio en el número de fondos que van a ir destinados a las distintas áreas. Se está hablando de 27 paquetes únicos para los 27 países y que después los países puedan utilizarlo de la forma que consideren. Me parece un riesgo para la equidad y para la salud, y ahí tenemos que trabajar muy duro todos estos meses para que no desaparezcan los fondos, para que crezcan y aunque se unifiquen, porque a veces es muy difícil encontrar financiación europea aún existiendo, se puede unificar el fondo para facilitar la permeabilidad, pero desde luego hay que estar muy atentos a estos cambios en el marco financiero plurianual, porque creo que no podemos perder ni un céntimo de euro para la salud de las mujeres.
And finally, to answer this question, I believe it is fundamental to speak about investment. In the European Parliament, we're currently talking about the new MFF, and it has been mentioned that health is not going to get the same inversion as previously. With this, there's no way we will achieve our objectives of screening of 90% screening by 2025 and others. It is because of this that, well, I think that we should pay a lot of attention, because the European Commission has announced a radical change in the budget. Then they have said that they are planning to create a budget divided in 27 areas, in which the European member states can take one of these 27 parts and do whatever they want with it. I think this is a very high risk, and that it is very important, to keep prioritizing health in order to make this budget more effective, and to make sure that health keeps receiving a proper budget.
Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, all very interesting points. And we'll come back to some of these really important topics that you brought up. But one of the things that you mentioned, and something that we haven't talked so much about yet, is the importance of recognizing women with metastatic breast cancer. And Fatima, I'd like to come back to you, because we can't really hold this panel without recognizing the needs of women with metastatic breast cancer. And we know that ABC Global Alliance has emphasized these unique needs. What gaps in care visibility remain for this group, and what are some practical ways to close them, reflecting on what you've heard so far?
So thank you very much. Indeed, the Advanced Breast Cancer Global Alliance has been fighting for more than a decade, almost 2 decades, for the rights of patients that have advanced or metastatic breast cancer. And these rights are needs are very similar to all patients that have advanced cancers. So in fact, the needs of someone with metastatic breast cancer are more similar to the ones with metastatic prostate cancer, for example, than they are with early breast cancer. But they cannot be forgotten. And it is fundamental that they are remembered. And it's quite sad, in my opinion, that the first draft of Europe's Beating Cancer Plan had no mention at all for the metastatic disease. And fortunately, they listened to several of us fighting for this group of patients. And now you do have some mentions about the specific needs of these patients, including, for example, in the WHO breast cancer initiative, Also in the beginning, there was not a lot of mention of metastatic disease. And yet in low middle income countries, the vast majority of cases are either locally advanced or metastatic. So we cannot forget the needs of these patients. And when we speak about inequalities, the group of patients with metastatic disease are very often forgotten. We correctly focus a lot on screening and early detection. This is fundamental. But please remember that even when diagnosed early, and even if treated properly, there is about 20-25% of patients that will have a relapse and will have metastatic disease. And these patients need availability of different types of treatment. It is not sufficient to have just one type because of the natural history of this disease. And that in a lot of countries, I listen to payers say, we are not going to approve this new treatment because we have the old one. It is not sufficient to have just 2 or 3. We need to have multiple treatments because these patients need multiple treatments throughout their lives. And finally, the metastatic breast cancer patients are finally living long enough with advanced disease to have issues of survivorship. Financial issues are fundamental. The amount of out-of-pocket expenses that exist in Europe, and not just Eastern Europe, all European countries. The amount of out-of-pocket expenses is huge and can lead a family to go bankrupt. So it's something not to be forgotten.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I'd like to move to a couple of questions for the full panel now. And I think reflecting on everything we've heard, there's a lot to do. There's a lot of gaps, a lot of challenges, but there's also a lot of really important things happening, like we talked about with clinical trials. And so I'd like to go back to sort of what we were talking about before about how, for example, technology and other tools can help to elevate the voices of women to address some of these needs, to surface some of these needs as we think about our approaches to care, whether it be from a policy, clinical trials, or an advocacy perspective. Does anyone have a thought on that, as sort of how these channels of communication with women living with breast cancer might be changing?
La tecnología. Well, for me,
Please.
bueno, yo creo que es fundamental que haya un altavoz para las mujeres. Y me parece muy interesante lo que acaba de exponer nuestra compañera desde su pantalla. Creo que no esté en el plan del cáncer, el cáncer de mama metastásico es un error de libro. Y tenemos que ser nosotras. Yo, de verdad que me gustaría decir todos, pero especialmente nosotras, ser ese altavoz. Yo tengo mucha esperanza en la ley de datos. Cuando podamos compartir los datos y tengamos esa directiva, creo que va a haber un avance real donde la ciencia puede ayudarnos mucho. Pero la visibilización es clave para buscar las soluciones y después el compartir todos esos datos cuando tengamos la ley, creo que va a ser un antes y un después en esta lucha contra el cáncer y especialmente contra el cáncer de mama o el cáncer metastásico en las mujeres. Esos datos van a aportar a la ciencia, van a aportar al sector farmacéutico, a las empresas, suficiente información para seguir creando medicamentos innovadores mucho más precisos, van a ayudar en los cribados a ser mucho más precisos y por lo tanto compartir y divulgar es clave para avanzar.
I believe it is essential to give a speaker to women. I think it is very interesting what our what our colleague here has just exposed about how in the beginning metastatic cancer was not included in the European Cancer Plan. I believe we all should become that speaker for women, but especially us standing here. I also have a lot of faith in the European health data space. I believe that once this is implemented, it will become a real advantage in advancing in cancer. I believe that also visualization is key, and to finding solutions, and that being able to share the data once this law is implemented will definitely mark a before and after in the fight against cancer, especially metastatic cancer, breast cancer. And it will also help the pharmaceutical sector and others to start creating more acute, precise medicines, as well as to start making more precise screening. So sharing data is essential in this fight against cancer and defeating it.
Yeah, I would like to add that from the pharmaceutical industry, we also can support a lot. Elena mentioned on terms of data. New technologies are there. It's not the future, it's the present. So we all, the stakeholders, have to learn how to get profit of that, to accelerate clinical trials, accelerate development of new medicines, but also, as you mentioned, to participate in the awareness of breast cancer, and as Rita mentioned, metastatic breast cancer, for example. In Spain, as far as I know, we have the unique patient association dedicated to metastatic breast cancer across all the European countries. They started quite recently, but they have done a fantastic job in making the Spanish society aware of what it means to have metastatic breast cancer. It's nothing to do with the pink ribbon that we put on October month. As Rita mentioned, they have needs that are beyond those early cancers that now we are so happy to see that the results on the treatment and diagnosis are so good. So I really think from pharmaceutical companies, we also can support on this society and patients and families and young people to be aware of what means cancer, different kind of cancers, and also on primary prevention. No, there are several risk factors that we can manage ourselves as individuals, and we have to be aware about them because we also can contribute to best outcomes on cancer.
Definitely. And I want to come back to something Maria Elena talked about with the European health data space and the concept of data in general. And I wonder from a clinical trial perspective, how are we thinking about the gaps that we know that exist, the disparities between genders in clinical trials, but also as we think more broadly about the clinical trial space and how it's innovating, what are some of the opportunities there to tackle some of the challenges that we've been talking about?
I think there's an incredible wealth of opportunity out there with some of the technologies on the horizon and the generation of a lot of new data that we couldn't have foreseen before. So we can try to really understand each individual patient to, better treat them, give them the treatment that they benefit from, looking at both survival outcomes and also quality of life, because it's really important to consider this holistic approach. So from our perspective, I think what we also have to kind of consider is how can our understanding in our clinical trials be also more pragmatic? So which are the data points that really matter for each individual patient, so that we can understand them as individuals? And maybe it's time for innovation also in say pricing mechanisms. I mean, thinking, each patient is an individual. What about unique, like value-based pricing to kind of mitigate some of the costs, because as we also look at the horizon, there's lots of new drugs that are coming and very expensive drugs. So I think it's going to be a challenge to better understand which technology, which new therapy innovation should benefit which patient, and what is the value for each patient.
Interesting. I'm curious, Dominika, from your perspective, I'd love to come back to the example of Slovakia, because we talked about a lot of things so far, right? Policy and clinical trials and all these pieces. And in the report, we think about, sort of the value of comparing countries to one another, not to punish any particular country, but the intention there is that there might be valuable lessons to be learned. And you talked about, looking to the Czech Republic. Can you just talk a little bit more about, again, when we focus toward what actually can be done and solutions, what can be learned from these kinds of lesson sharing and ability to look at how different countries are doing?
It's very difficult sometimes to be listening to numbers, because Slovakia is really in the bottom of all charts when we are talking about mortality on breast cancer. So when you will be looking for some data, you will not travel to our country, because if you are become sick, it's really the system is not helping patients. How things can be improved? When we were talking about data, it's absolutely missing. For example, now Slovakia is the last country where sonography is done as a prevention. We are the only country in Europe, because in the other countries it's much more personalized. But in Slovakia, each woman after 18 is going to sonogram after 18 each 2 years. So we are stopping it now. And what is missing really is communication between organization and people. Really, they announced that sonogram is going to be stopped, and we received as the patient organization 750 questions on Facebook what they can do instead of having a sonogram. So this was just an example to show you how communication is missing in Slovakia. It's really fundamental. I can understand why sonograms are going to be stopped. I can understand that there should be there should be more questions on visiting doctors about families, and if there is cancer in previous mom or grandmom, there should have genetic testing. This I understand it very well, but this is not something that women in Slovakia understand. They are really afraid of everything. They have there is lack of knowledge. So this is first step. Communication is fundamental from my perspective. Then what I see next is really involving patients into decision making roundtables. We are very often present. We are very often being listened to, but we have no right to vote. So it's many times only about taking pictures and being there, but not present in real. And what is missing, and what I see maybe last step, is that we are missing strong networking between more institutions. So for example, when we are talking about prevention, there is a possibility to be connected with the Ministry of Culture, because they are having all media. So I was asking to make some programs in TV, national TV, to speak more about prevention and screening, to explain, to involve patient stories. But they are not interested into being connected. So this is really something we really miss: strong network And I think this is fundamental to make improvements. But there's many topics I can speak about.
No, that was really good.
So
It's very helpful to have those examples. So.
and maybe I can also mention the current situation in Slovakia, that we are changing law concerning medical access. We are changing the process of having new drugs. And this is very, very difficult process. And we are really afraid that the pharmaceutical companies will be able to come to Slovakia and to bring new medicines. So this is something very, very actual that we are talking about Ministry of Health, and we are really trying to bring more patient stories and show that we have really a lot of metastatic patient in our NGO, for example. They are paying for the drug. And we are talking really about like 2,000-3,000 euros per each 3 weeks, but they are paying, and we can see really stories of women they are paying and they are alive with good quality of life. When we compare it to Czech Republic, for example, there is a drug that is going to be used for 7-6 years, like a normal standard medicine, but in Slovakia we are paying for it. So this is actual story in my little country, and we are trying hard to be involved, and we are trying hard to be involved into decision making with a right to vote.
That's really important, because just being able to come and have a voice is one thing, but being able to see the impact of that voice beyond a picture is really important. Did you want to?
Me gustaría decir que es muy importante, porque me produce mucha tristeza escuchar sus reflexiones y la situación que viven en Eslovaquia, o en Hungría también está pasando algo similar, ¿no? Tenemos que recordar que la competencia en materia de salud no es de la Unión Europea, es de los Estados miembros. Y esto es lo que está provocando esa falta de equidad en el acceso a los tratamientos, esa falta de equidad en las mujeres a la hora de acceder a los cribados, porque la Unión Europea puede hacer recomendaciones a los Estados miembros, pero no puede imponer las medidas que vienen en el propio plan, por ejemplo, del cáncer. Pero sí puede hacer algo, que es condicionar los fondos al cumplimiento de determinados hitos. Por ejemplo, para poder acceder a fondos de salud, que los países puedan estar obligados a cumplir, por ejemplo, con un número de cribados, una información pública y accesible para las mujeres, etc. El sistema de hitos se implementó ya en los Next Generation. En unos estados ha funcionado muy bien, en otros no, pero al menos hay la obligación de cumplir unos requisitos mínimos para acceder a financiación europea, y probablemente habría que explorar también estas vías con temas tan serios como la salud y el cáncer en las mujeres.
Yo entiendo español.
Ah, qué bien, me alegro. Me alegro. Yo entiendo inglés, pero no lo hablo.
I think it's very important on the points that you just mentioned, and I feel very sad about the reflections that my colleague has said about Slovakia. I believe that a similar situation is taking place in Hungary. I think it's very important to remember that when it comes to health, is this state member in the fact that the health is competence of the state members is what's causing the inequality in access to treatment, to screening. The European Union can recommend the member states to do certain things, but it can't force them to do any of them. And it can, in the same way, it can force them to achieve the recommendations of the European Cancer Plan. What it can do is put certain conditions on accessing funds, by achieving certain objectives. For example, to achieve the health funds, the European members might have to have achieved a certain percentage of screening or similar objectives. This system of objectives was implemented with the Next Generation funds, and it has worked better with some member states than others. But I believe it's essential to keep pushing to explore cancer and breast cancer.
Great, thank you. I'll come to questions in just a moment, but Anna, did you want to come in on this?
Yeah, I think we all align. It's absolutely key that the innovations arrive to the patients. We can keep innovating, bringing new innovative treatments, put the voice of the patients on the table, but it's absolutely key. Those access are fast, no, and those medications arrive to the patient that need them.
Absolutely, absolutely. Are there any questions in the room for our panel? Yes. A mic is coming. Just a moment.
I do have a question for Professor Cardoza, if I may. Professor Cardoza, as you're aware, women in low-middle-income countries present with breast cancer at least 1 decade before they do here in the West. They present with sometimes fungating tumors and they do not come early. And the question really is, outside the realm of just treatment, is that these women face what psychological, emotional, societal, and family pressures. They don't come forward because of gender issues. They don't come forward because how they may be seen in their families. There are women who are divorced, or their husbands will divorce them if they know they have breast cancer. So they do not come early at all. And there's also the caregiver model, because these women are multi-parents. They have multiple children. They are young. They don't want to come forward because even though they know they have breast cancer, because they will be isolated by the society in which they live or the community in which they live. How does the ABC Global Alliance address these issues?
Thank you. Thank you very much for this question. This is fundamental because this problem of stigma and stigmatization of the person with cancer occurs in many countries still, and don't think that this is a problem just of low middle income countries. It exists everywhere. As a very anecdotal example, I lived in Belgium for 10 years. I worked in Belgium. And in the early 2000s, I had a patient that after breast cancer, when she came back to work, her desk had been put in a separate room because everybody was afraid that cancer was contagious. And this was Belgium, the year 2000 and something. So stigma and misconceptions about breast cancer are very strong. And there are indeed, the rate of divorce after a woman has breast cancer is about 40% in high income countries. It's even higher in low middle income countries. So you are totally right. And one of our goals and objectives in our charter is tackling stigma and misconceptions that lead to stigma. This is a step that we find fundamental. And the stigma is not just on the general public. It also exists within the researchers, the pharma, the clinicians, particularly regarding metastatic breast cancer. And people have extreme views. Either they say, oh, this is an incurable disease, so it doesn't matter. We do not need to invest. Or they are confused and they think that all breast cancers are the same and all are within the pink movement. I'm not saying anything bad about the pink movement. If something so fantastic happened in early breast cancer, it was because of the pink movement. But there are cases that are not within that. I also asked permission to the moderator to say something. I had my hand up for a while.
Oh, I'm sorry. Please go ahead. Yeah.
It's just because of what we were discussing about what can be done and what needs to be done at the country level and what can perhaps be done at an European or global level. I try to be very pragmatic for these problems that are huge. You have to cut the problems into smaller pieces and try to tackle them. There are two things that we could do at a European or global level. We always speak about expensive medicines, but what we are really struggling is what we call essential medicines. These are inexpensive medicines, but we have a huge shortage of these medicines. In Europe, for example, it is very frequent that we are out of tamoxifen. Tamoxifen is the most important drug for the most frequent subtype of breast cancer. In Portugal, we didn't have tamoxifen for 5 months last year, 6 months the year before. And for young women, this is the most important treatment, and it costs nothing. So for a long time, we've been advocating that Europe could create its own factory of essential medicines, of generics, that could, for example, be put in Eastern Europe, where labor is less expensive, and serve the entire European countries. The second thing that we can do all together is data. We have no idea how many people are living with metastatic breast cancer. This is not registered. Cancer registers only register diagnosis and death. They do not register relapse. They don't know how many patients are living with metastatic cancer, breast or others. So this is time for this to be changed in all countries at the central level of all the cancer registries. So these are two action points that we can all go home and fight for.
Thank you, Fatima. Really important summary, I think, of many things that we talked about in our discussion. And unfortunately, we're out of time. So I think that's an important place to end this discussion. But I think, my key takeaways from this are not only, the massive challenges and gaps that we have, but there really are actionable things that we can do, whether it's with data or policy or partnership and collaboration to help start filling these gaps. And we hope that the report that we shared is one thing that can help inform some of those actions. So thank you very much to all the panelists today.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.